Please welcome Chris Lewicki to the stage.
Good, everyone. How's my voice carrying up here? Good baritone resonance.
Use your opera voice.
My opera voice does. I would have to do some Italian that I barely remember from high school.
A few more drinks.
So, just in brief tonight, I'll share just a little bit, 15-minute arc of a story from what got me into space, what I think we've gotten to as an industry, in some ways, which is, maybe a little bit of a reverse history, a kind of a Twilight type zone if a civilization were coming here to analyze our society. The way that space exploration has played out is actually kind of odd. If you look at our history, and I'll touch on that. I want to tell you a little bit about what we're specifically pursuing in planetary resources, and what does it mean to mine asteroids, and why are we doing that crazy, audacious thing. And bring that back to Seattle, what we're doing here today, and really the opportunity that you have as an entrepreneur and as a business to work on significant problems with a long-term goal, but with near-term value as you're doing that. So to go back to my history, I am a Wisconsin, not quite farm boy. Country boy, my friends were farmers. Grew up, I just got a letter from one of our fans that I opened yesterday and read, and it was talking about a young girl who was in 8th grade in a class of only 89. They didn't have APs, or she barely got into her AP classes, and I thought, well, this isn't that nice. I was from a class of 32, they didn't even teach pre-calculus. No one in my high school really ever left the state to do anything other than be a dairy farmer. And for me to have the idea that I think this came to me in 1989 that this would be a career of mine I have no idea how that happened, except that I actually know precisely how it happened. And to talk a little bit of history, I wanted to emphasize the history of this year. So in the last year, we have seen spacecraft land on a comet, and orbit that comet, and see things that, again, Bruce Willis in Armageddon and Deep Impact did a fine job of really messing up the physics and confusing it. And what Rosetta and Philae have done at, say it with me, 67P Cherubim Winkle. I know you all got it down. There's a video on our website you can follow, and I stumbled over it a little bit myself. But what we've really seen is like that dynamic body that's been orbiting the sun for eons. And that was, and is, extraordinarily cool. There's a spacecraft orbiting a comet, and we're watching things that have been around for billions of years bubble off the surface and float endlessly into space. Someone needs to be there capturing that stuff and selling it. The other thing that was absolutely extraordinary was at the beginning of July, of course, the encounter with Pluto and the excitement right before it. And for me, that flyby really hit home. And I was thinking, the arc of my career really began when I watched the Voyager 2 flyby of Neptune. And I was an 8th grader in Dairyland reading about this thing, probably in the Planetary Report, because I was a Planetary Society member. And I probably found something in the pre-internet days where you could buy the CD set from NASA. CDs were a really new thing. And it was only like $500. But if you were a nonprofit organization, they would sell them to you at cost for like 49 bucks. So I founded the Future Scientists of America and wrote off to them to get that CD set. And really that's kind of where I decided to start on that journey. And as we flew by Pluto this summer, and this planet that's out there, or planetoid, or whatever you want to call it, that just like so many things in our life, we take for granted the mysteries that have been revealed to us in less than the length of our teenage children. 22 years ago, we didn't know what an asteroid looked like. It was just a dot in the sky, and all we had was Luke Skywalker and C-3PO and Han Solo, and the odds of successfully navigating asteroid fields are 3,723 to 1. You never tell me that. So, for me, it was, in the beginning, it was like that exploration aspect. And, through my career, going to school, kind of being a part of that, People probably heard a little bit of my story of being flight director when I was 29 years old for the Spirit and Opportunity Mars rovers, and able to have an experience which I cannot tell you how awesome it is after it works. Before it works, it's like the worst thing you could possibly imagine and the most stressful thing in life, and there's cameras on you. So that was an extraordinary experience, having the opportunity to do that by the age of 30, by the age of 35, being able to do mission manager of the Mars Phoenix mission. And realizing, the wonderful capability that we have, and what is really, I came to understand, was relatively common, in some cases antiquated technology we were doing these extraordinary things with. And I was seeing things with Peter D. Manis and the Google Lunar X Prize, looking at people compete for that. I had known Eric Anderson in early days, Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. Again, an organization founded by Peter. That's how the three of us really kind of knew each other. And I was looking, it's like, all right, well, you've landed on Mars 3 times, what do you do now? You go to Disneyland. But I really saw an opportunity, and it's a lot of just those simple, frivolous comments you see on refrigerator magnets. Be the change you want to see in the world. And that was one of the things that stuck with me. Another one that I think I've developed over time is what is possible is inevitable. And I really saw the path of going from where we are right now with today's technology, with everything that we've learned from government investments, and things that are billions of dollars and thousands of people to create these extraordinary machines and these wonderful things. These are now things that you can do in your garage with a few people and sometimes a few $100. You can repeat things that were the height of technology in the 1960s. So this is how accessible it is. And one thing that I don't think we realize is you don't need all that high technology to do useful things. You need it maybe to understand our place in the solar system, and are we alone, and where did all the water on Mars come from, and complicated questions like that. And what is the deuterium to hydrogen ratio, and what does that mean for the evolution of the planet Mars? Those are really difficult and expensive questions that take the resources of governments to answer. To answer, is there water that we can use on fuel on that carbonaceous asteroid? That's actually a pretty easy question to answer, technologically speaking. I can take a Mariner spacecraft made in the 1960s, rebuild it, launch it, get all the data we need to answer that question. In the 1960s, the Mariner spacecraft was probably $600 million. Today, CubeSat can do that job, if you can talk to it. So there's a few things you got to solve. So our mission and vision at Planetary Resources is to take the technology that we have today, to take the access to capital, to take our ability to do with an individual person, which once took a division of a large corporation, and go out there and address what we believe are very valuable questions to know. And the entire basis of the economy that we have here on the planet today is because of all the wonderful resources, especially that we have here in Seattle. This city was built by resources. San Francisco was built by the gold rush. This city was built by the Yukon gold rush. Fisheries, woodland, everything that we have here is what allows us to be here. And there's two parts to that resource. And I think even former Deputy Administrator at NASA, Lori Garber, she and Neil deGrasse Tyson, I'm not quite sure which is the source of this, but she was talking about, same things motivate everybody, fear, greed, and glory. So, the greed is what got us out into these frontiers, that I'm going to be rich, mining for gold. And, a lot of fortunes were made, and a lot of hard lives were lived in that. But that greed and that glory of the gold miner really brought forward a whole ecosystem of businesses to really support that industry. And now you have the stories like Levi's is the most profitable company off the California gold rush because everybody's got to wear pants. Or at least everyone appreciates wearing So, it's the tools of the trade, so to speak, which actually everyone who's trying to make a buck needs to use. So, no one ever contemplated that gold mining would create that side industry. And now you have you have hotels, you have businesses, you have suppliers, you have trading, you have real estate, and then you just have Seattle. And it takes a little bit of everything. The thing is, what is the catalyst? And for us, for Peter, Eric, and I, the catalyst is an economic engine that drives the exploration that we're also passionate about. The reason to go out into space isn't because it's awesome. Although the people who can afford that reason, God bless them, Eric will sell them a ticket. This is Eric Anderson in Space Adventures, and folks like Charles Simonian, our investors, who's been able to make that trip. But for the rest of us, it's the business case and being able to have the reason that will drive an investment, the reason that people will see an economic interest, or even the ability to create something that's valuable along the way. We talked about all the spin-offs of the space programs. I've just described to you all the spin-offs of the gold mining program in the 1850s. So for us, what's central, if we are going to be a multi-planetary species, or are we going to cease to be a species, is going to be defined by our ability to control our environment, to expand into space, to leverage the resources that are out there, and continue to do the things which have allowed us to crawl out of the caves and into the light and build our civilizations and societies. And we at Planetary Resources see asteroids as the key next step and actually the most accessible destination in the solar system to be able to do that. And I'm never without props, and I'll assist here. So asteroids, just a little bit of a science lesson, and apologize for those that I've taught multiple times now, and somewhere in my pockets, I can find it. It's easier when I'm wearing a suit, but so asteroids, a couple things that I want you to know about them. They're objects that are left around from the formation of the solar system. Primitive, simple, relatively collections of the same stuff, referred to as homogeneous. Passed around the room here are actually fragments of asteroids that you probably know as shooting stars and see in museums as meteorites. We have actually samples of the actual stuff. We know what's out there. It's scientifically understood. And there's even been 3 missions now that have gone and orbited around asteroids. In one case, we returned samples all the way back to the Earth. So we have ground truth. 2 more government scientific missions are on the way, and I would include the mission to Churyumov-Gerasimenko in the category of small bodies and asteroids, because it's all the same chemistry and solar system physics. So we have wonderful understanding of exactly what's out there. The next part of this is their orbits, and a little bit of astrophysics lessons. Near-Earth asteroids aren't between Mars and Jupiter and on the way to the outer solar system. Near-Earth asteroids are those asteroids that over time in the pinball game of the solar system ended up having orbits kind of similar to the Earth's. They're crossing the Earth, the best ones, and we'll have a blog post out on this any day now. I've been dragging Caitlin on for too long, the final edit of that, but we'll reach them. They'll probably be out tonight or tomorrow. And then Caitlin's going to hold this to me. So we'll read the blog first. But the closest ones and the most accessible ones are ones with orbits very similar to the Earth. And I describe this to people who aren't familiar with this science. It's like catching the bus. If you miss the bus didn't disappear. The bus isn't any harder to get to or get off of. It's not in front of you right now. If you run really fast and expend a lot of energy, you can catch up to the bus. But you could just wait for the next time that it's at the stop, then walk out to the corner and get out. That's how near-Earth asteroids work. It's actually almost precisely the same physics and energy. And it's a very simple explanation that you can catch the local bus, or you can walk all the way down to the airport. And that really, in a lot of cases, or walk to the top of Mount Rainier is probably a better example. Even though the moon is very close, it's at the bottom of a gravity well. And that takes energy to overcome, to land safely on the moon. And if you want to pick some stuff up and bring it back, it takes energy again. And this is, the laws of thermodynamics. You have to conserve that energy, so you have to spend it. So without gravity, with a very low gravity in asteroids, they're an ideal target. And almost 4,000 asteroids are actually easier to get to than landing on your own surface of the moon. And then the other part of this, probably the third piece, is that asteroids are the very stuff left over from the formation of the solar system that are going to be the Seattle of the future. That's what's going to allow us to form that beachhead in space and stay there. And have, over time, to ship less and less things into space as we start to build more and more of it on site. So the most important thing today that we see is water. Plain old H2O off of a carbonaceous asteroid, the dark black thing that's moving around the room here. Water is really plentiful here on Earth. We might debate whether it's fresh or salt water. But it's also very plentiful in space. problem is to take the water here on Earth and ship it into space is very expensive. And even if Blue Origin and SpaceX and all the other companies who are pushing the frontier to reduce launch costs, even if they reduce that launch cost down to the cost of the energy to put into it, from an energy leverage standpoint, you still just want to send the smart stuff from the Earth and the irreplaceable stuff, like you and me, hopefully. So in that case, what we want to do is use as much as we can and live off the land that's out there. And water is $60 million a ton if you want to ship it to lunar orbit or on the way to Mars. So if we could just simply deliver a ton of water, which is a small fish tank, it's not that much material, for cheaper than $60 million, you got a business. That is the first piece. The uses for those water, of course, we all know what we use water for here on Earth. The hydrogen and oxygen on it are rocket fuel, the same rocket fuel that powered the space shuttle. One 70-meter carbonaceous near-Earth asteroid has enough water on it to form hydrogen and oxygen to have launched all 135 of the space shuttle flights. So it's an enormous resource. There's an unlimited supply of it relatively near to the Earth, and it's just waiting for us to develop it. And while we're on our way to Mars, and there's more in the news about this every day, we still have to deal with radiation. And to be able to inhibit that radiation and survive long-duration spaceflight, the best way of doing it is the same way that we deal with spent nuclear fuel here on Earth, is to use water. A meter of water has the same protecting capability as the entire stacked column height of the atmosphere and the magnetosphere. So it turns out that water is pretty damn useful stuff, and that's just what gets us started. Doing things like metals, whether it's simple things like iron, nickel, and cobalt, that metal and that metallic asteroid that's going around the room is the future of construction in space. And using technologies like 3D printing to build things that we don't have to fold up and put in a rocket, that have to survive the rigors of launch and go through all the G-loading and vibration, and have to fit in however big the fairing is. If I want to build a gazebo like this, rather than doing 28 different missions to send it up into space, I'll just go get the amount of material it would take to put it together, send the 3D printer going, and come back when it's done. And oh, by the way, it doesn't even have to hold up its own weight. So this is completely rethinking about how we put stuff out in space. And the platinum apple that's out at the end of this roadmap and the perfection of the industry is ultimately bringing the scarcest and most valuable things all the way back here to the surface of the planet. Talking about what Peter talks about in his book, In Abundance, it's not that things are scarce, it's that they're not accessible to us. There is an enormous amount of these extremely valuable 6 metals, platinum, iridium, osmium, ruthenium, etc., that are available to us. And I like to just think of it as elements. If an engineer could just use one of these elements without having to check the price tag, it really could redefine our relationship with engineering and materials. So for us, having this driver, having the aspects of it that create that economic engine that cause us to want to go out there, that give us the raw stock to build every other business that we want to have into space, and to be able to support its whole development and operation so that we don't have to ship in stuff from the motherland except immigrants. That really is the vision of planetary resources. So in doing that, we've worked out really a stepwise plan that I think every entrepreneur needs to do in creating a roadmap. And I will say we're totally wrong in the plan that we're implementing right now. We just don't know where we're wrong. We know where we want to get in the end goal, but what we need to do along the way is try things that we think will work and see if they will work along the way, understand the markets for them, understand how technology adapts. Sometimes we'll win, sometimes we'll lose. But it's understanding that this isn't just going out and creating Star Trek or Star Wars. It's understanding that all of these things are an evolution along the way. And one of the things that I'm most excited about, and as a former NASA engineer and with advanced degrees in engineering and design, I think in a lot of ways we overthink the way that we solve problems. We look for the most exquisite, advanced, highest technology, perfect way that we can do things, when sometimes a sledgehammer will do the same job. So we need to realize what are we really trying to accomplish, and what's the minimum thing that we can do to accomplish that. And this is the efficiency of the market. It's not what will the government bear, and how do I meet my level 1 science requirements and keep my staff of 1,000 employed for this project, the next project. It's what's valuable and what's the least amount of resources I can deploy to capture that value. And I think in a lot of ways in space, and what I mentioned in the beginning, this is kind of inverted. If you were to come in and examine the way that space has developed, Kennedy came in and said, "Let a man on the moon before this decade is out." And all of a sudden, it was a race. It was based on fear. We were all motivated to make sure that it was a red, white, and blue moon instead of a red moon. Maybe not. I know there may be Russians who are speaking for us, so my apologies, but welcome to our country. But, you know, an extraordinary amount of things happened where we snatched the future into the 1960s. And we did it in a way that wasn't sustainable because it made zero economic sense how all that happened. It was done through sheer brute force and the economic power of those two superpowers. And we have tried over the past many decades to repeat that model, taking a long time to realize that that model does not compute from a business standpoint. And I think what we're discovering with all the young companies in the 2000s and the 2010s now is that the innovation isn't the technology. The excitement about what you're working on isn't in space. It's the business model. And it's identifying that business model and describing it, building a plan around it, raising the capital for it, and executing on it, and keeping every one of those things moving forward, each at a little pace at a time. And you'll never have, you know, if Rex Reidnar from Ecliptic, a former colleague that I worked with at Blastoff, used an analogy that I like. It's like a three-legged stool. You know, all the legs got to be the same length. You can't all of a sudden, you know, solve the financing problem. And, you know, now that leg is 10 feet long, you know, and that's a little bit out of whack. Your investors probably aren't going to want to give you that much runway. And, you know, you can't solve the technology problem because, you know, the other two legs won't be able to catch up. So it's balancing all of those and really bringing together the balance of those into the execution of a business that I think we finally realized through a number of different failed starts and a number of successful starts where space is a place and now it has the opportunity through technology, through capital, and through our passion about it and our resources to be a business like any other. And that's really what I'm excited about. And I'll end this discussion and go to questions and maybe just a general status update of the company. You know, Seattle was a very intentional choice for Planetary Resources and myself as we set up the company because, you know, we had a very long-term view of what we wanted to accomplish. We wanted something no less than to fuel humanity's exploration into the cosmos in a way that was sustainable on a market-driven set of principles that would, you know, just kind of be the way the world is from that point on. And we weren't going to do that in 3 to 5 years. You know, like starting your app company or kind of a lot of other common startups. We also had a set of unique resources that we needed to draw upon, which don't exist everywhere. Not only in the world, I would say, you know, the United States is still probably one of the few places in the world that you can have a spaceflight company, a power beaming company, a rocket propulsion company, an asteroid mining company, and all these in one place right here in Seattle. So the resources that we have here, because of the history of this region, are really everything that we need to start this next era in space development and exploration. The technology, the intellect, the access to information, and all these other societies. We need to stop partitioning space as a special thing. It's just a thing. And it takes all the attention and the advances that the medical device industry is innovating. It takes all of the intellect and algorithms and visualization challenges that the gaming community is developing. And it takes all the economic interests and all of the business models and the experimentations and market studies that folks like Amazon are developing from a sales channel standpoint. So from that standpoint, it has to be a business like any other. And the reason that you have a space company and that you want someone to invest in it isn't because it's space, it's because it's going to make money and it's going to do something that people value. And ultimately, and certainly my personal cause for this, it's going to do something that you fundamentally think is important. And that people can get behind and they can get behind for the long term. So Seattle, compared to a lot of different places that we looked at, has all of that. It's a wonderful place to live. It has all the resources that we're at. and I'm really glad that we're helping create it as the new center of this forward-looking development of an industry that's going to take us all into the cosmos. So with that, I'll shut up, take a little bit of a drink, and then I'd be happy to have a discussion with everybody on kind of how you feel about that and where we might be going from here. Yes, sir.
So, replacing your appropriate stool metaphor with the ladder, where each step of success helps you reach the next one you fly. It seems to me when I hear your business plan that the refueling stations in space is a weak step in the ladder. That interplanetary missions are more likely to need energy than hydrogen. They're not likely to use hydrogen and oxygen as fuel because it's much less efficient than an ion drive or some alternative drive.
You're thinking high technology.
I'm thinking of what I think is going to be the way that you move a probe or a rocket from one planetary body to another planetary body in 15 years is unlikely to be a chemical reaction of hydrogen and oxygen in a rocket. I think we might still use that to get into orbit, but I don't think we'll use that for orbital transfer. Ion drives are not new technology today, and they're much more efficient. Assuming that I'm correct, that we don't use hydrogen and oxygen as an interplanetary body fuel, is that a step in your ladder that you can skip? That is your business plan say, well, okay, we can go straight to higher value commodities on these bodies? Or do you really, is that a step that's hard for you to skip?
I don't think that we would be able to say whether that's a fundamental assumption or not. From a resource standpoint, from first principles, there's mass, reaction mass, elements and chemicals, and where their energy state is in the solar system and our access to them. So, whether the ion drive is powered with material that's sourced from the surface of the Earth, or if you create an ion drive actually out of water, which there's a company in Seattle too, which is working on that technology. In the cases, for example, looking at SpaceX, one example, Mars colony transport, that they were talking about methane refueling and things like that, for you being able to use insertion resource utilization on Mars. Methane, as a fuel source, is only actually 20% of the mass of that system. The oxidizer is the other 80%. So if you could just send the methane out and bring the oxidizer in from an asteroid source, you've solved an incredible problem in that energy balance. And from a technology standpoint, again, I challenge you to think about efficiency. And it wasn't a state-of-the-art diesel-electric engine operating at the maximum efficiency with a bullet train or whatever it may be that got us from the East Coast to the West Coast. It was burning wood and creating steam in a boiler, which sucks from a technology standpoint.
But it was the technology.
But it was the technology of the day. And I think we have to have that mindset in space. We're going to start with the easy, crude, and brute force stuff because it is available to us and it is abundant.
So what will be your energy source to crack the water at the S?
The energy source at the center of the solar system. Yeah, so we can't think about electricity as something that is expensive to produce. And in fact, you can't even think about electrolysis. You have to think about high temperature electrolysis, which is less efficient than electrical electrolysis, but free. And I don't have to create a semiconductor and solar arrays and structures. All I need to do is use 1990s technology that NASA demonstrated on the Spartan mission on STS-77 to collect solar energy and concentrate it at a point. And this is kind of, I like to twist people's perception to think about how we solve these problems. I mean, if I drop you out in the middle of the Cascades, with nothing but a buck knife, you're not going to all of a sudden give up because you don't have access to a burner stove and dehydrated food, and you're going to be pretty resourceful pretty quick. That's the state that we are in developing space. We need to accept it. We need to realize that you don't need to buy that wonderful high-priced REI, awesome sleeping bag to be able to survive the night. It's really awesome and it'll keep you really warm, But you live without it, and you'll get on without it, and you can move forward without it. And for me, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, we have to beat away what NASA and aerospace has trained into us because of, and again, I'm speaking on this as an abuser of robots, not as one who has to preserve life. And I want to distinguish that very clearly. What you would do for exploring space with humans is a much higher standard than what we're doing if we're just having stupid space techs going around the solar system, giving us the raw materials that we need. I can afford to be very, very wrong, much more often than someone who needs to support me design. So in this case, it's just barely do it. And like Reid Hoffman says, launch your product when you're still very embarrassed about it. Otherwise, you launch it too late. So next question, please. Mark, right?
Mark Mine.
Yeah.
Mike, the question that people bandied about here is that Seattle is the Silicon Valley of satellites, essentially. I've heard that many times. Where can we get some numbers? How many companies are there? What are they making?
Does anybody I'm sure there's someone more qualified in the room to speak on that than me.
I mean, obviously, I know about planetary research and a few others that are important, coordinate economic and others.
Yeah.
Is there a centralized source about all this? The reason I ask is I come from the biotech and the IT sector.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm not a statistician on the Seattle numbers, so I don't know if Sean, if you want to comment on this.
Yeah, maybe Joe and Space Angels. You guys might have some insight. The Department of Commerce has a embryonic trade association, the Washington State Space Coalition. They might be a good source. Bob Bagshaw, if you're around.
An organization like the WBBA for biotech.
Right.
I would ask Chris Rivera that number.
Well, actually,
Yes.
Mark, this brings to mind, there was a gentleman that I watched give a presentation this year from the Silicon Valley Space Authority in Minneapolis themselves. I can't remember his name, but he was a statistician on all the cool things that are going on in Silicon Valley. So we've got a group industry that we've been working with, in terms of just understanding how we can develop Washington State from a business environment for these emerging space groups, but we haven't tallied numbers. So
Also, Commercial Space Flight Federation.
yes,
You guys work with them as well?
yes, we're a member of the Commercial Space Flight Federation.
So if you go on their website, there's a list.
Yeah.
And you can pick out
So
Seattle.
we'll just note this is something that every space entrepreneur in Seattle should have a fact sheet that they can rattle off on what this is.
One of the reasons I'm interested is the fire reason, which is that I see space as highly integrated. You're really into space robotics. You're making robots to go in space and do these things. But you have to be good at everything, coding, even biology.
Yeah, it's a system. Yeah.
And so that makes you really pivotal industry for a place like Seattle, which seems to specialize in not being specialized.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I'm glad you bring that up. This is something that I think, for me, leaving NASA and entering the commercial world, was looking at the balance between all these things. And CubeSats, everyone, if you're not familiar with CubeSats, it's essentially a standard that's been defined. It's kind of like the U.S. Postal Service, so there's a flat rate box. If it fits, it ships. So you create a standard that if you build your satellite this way, you'll get into space. And they made it kind of inconveniently small when they defined it in 1999. And what we've seen over time is the technology that has evolved to fill that same box has allowed that volume to do more and more over time. Just like your cell phone, has been able to do more and more over time. But if we had not miniaturized camera technology beyond a VHS camcorder in the 1990s, the movie feature on your cell phone would be pretty useless because you would have this big barnacle hanging out of your back pocket when you wanted to take movies. But
You've got the computing you need.
exactly, yeah. So it's about again finding the synthesis of all these different technologies and the right balance for them. Let's take another question. Yes, sir.
So you guys are well into your second development of your second vehicle, I think 6. How far away are we from Arctic 100? And will it still look kind of like the telescope with solar panels that you showed us
Yeah, so let me give a little bit of history. So our roadmap goes from the Arctic 3, which the original one blew up on top of an Antares rocket. It was a spectacular explosion. I remember just watching that going, wow. That was honestly my first emotional reaction. Then it was like, oh shit. But so, from that all the way out to what we have called Arctic 300 is the vehicle that we want to arrive at the asteroid and support the remote sensing work for prospecting. To answer the question, is this the asteroid with the resource on it that we're ready to develop to the next step? And rather than do what I did when I worked at NASA, which is, design the Arctic 300 from the get-go and spend 7 years and $700 million doing that, it was like, well, let's design this like we design software. Let's come out with a beta version or an alpha version, or maybe just like an algorithm. And so Arctic 3, Arctic 6, Arctic 100, 200, and 300 are kind of snapshots of that release philosophy. And what we do is we have the opportunity to improve on it and test in all its various aspects. So we did successfully rebuild Arctic 3 for the A3R, launched it April 14th off of a mission out of Florida, Sierra 6. That one made it to space, deployed from the International Space Station on a wonderful day, July 16th, the anniversary of the Apollo 11 launch to the moon. It was nice to have that. I will look forward in history years hence when an asteroid mining company is in the historical footnotes of Neil and Buzz went to the moon, and also on this day, the history of asteroid mining began. So that was very momentous for us, and a company with this crazy idea, it released its first product, which was for us an engineering test, but it meant everything that we wanted to do for it, and we're upping the game with Arctic 6. To really, what we found is we wanted to add an interim step. Was we didn't test everything on the 3 that we wanted to. We weren't quite ready to build the 100, so let's do something in the middle. So Arctic 6 has on it better systems for knowing how we're pointed. It's very important when we're using optical communications and lasers 100 million miles away from Earth. It has better systems on it for the compute and the reliable architecture in a radiation environment. It has better power production and management capability. But probably the most important thing is it really starts to introduce what I'll call the moneymaker. And for us, the moneymaker is the information. And we're a company ultimately that at our core is producing platforms for sensors to provide information about resources. What a prospector does. A normal prospector uses his eyeballs and maybe a pickaxe. We use a robot with a sensor on it. So what we are deploying with Arctic 6 is what's known as a mid-wave infrared imager. Think of it as thermographic imaging, being able to measure the temperature of things. But most importantly, when we are looking for water, being able to see the actual spectral signature that says, without a doubt, this is water. And we still have Dawn orbiting the asteroid Sirius, and everyone's wondering what those white dots are. And they haven't quite gotten close enough to take the right measurement. So that's what we're trying to avoid is we want to say it's water. This is why it's water, because that's the only thing we care about, and all that other stuff is for NASA. So Arctic 6, actually just in the last 2 days, we started the full flight build of it. It's coming together and taking shape. We'll start releasing some pictures and doing some interviews and blog posts related to the development of that. Arctic 100 is being shaped by our Arctic 3 experience and our Arctic 6 experience. And one of the things that we're excited about is both in work that we're doing with NASA under contract for developing 3D printing technologies for satellites and for developing spectroscopic imaging technologies for asteroids, is we have the opportunity to take these sensors and point them down at our own planet. And we have a very kind of particular niche of a measurement that we can make for resources on asteroids. And what we're finding is how valuable that measurement is for resources right here on Earth. And resources, ranging from things that you think for mining, but all the way out to agriculture and just monitoring economic activity on the planet. So, this is from an entrepreneurial standpoint, this is your roadmap. And one of the things that I encounter on a weekly basis, talking to the public or doing interviews is people are like, oh, it's going to take you so long to make money. decades to mine asteroids and, the market, and it's going to take forever. He's like, no, we're actually making money today. So we're making money on the contracts and the technology we have. We're deploying platforms that have applications of things other than asteroid prospecting. And you must do this. It's the concept of minimum viable product. And for us, our guide star is asteroid prospecting and mining. For SpaceX, their guide star is colonization of Mars. Neither of us are directly working on that subject exactly today at scale. But what we're working on today in the business that we're growing feeds directly into that vision. And that's what I appreciate so much with the support we've had from our investors and the time that we've taken to develop this, that we can very carefully construct that path that, we're constantly adjusting both with what we learn and how the world changes around us in pursuing that. So Orbit 100 is something that we'll be deploying in 2016. I think it'll look pretty much the same. We're trying to build it for that 12U form factor so that, the U.S. Postal Service, when it fits in ship, we can get a good launch price on that. That's how things are progressing. The 3D printing technology that we're working on will allow us to do the crazy idea we have for Orbit 200 to make that flying fuel tank work. And a lot of different bets, many of them which we hope will work, and a couple that we're going to have to, find a different solution for. So, one more question, and I think we'll kind of distribute for socializing.
Kind of this observation, I'd like to get your input on this as well. I think one of the things that we might want to look at, just as not like it's going to be hard, is the whole, we've got to learn to walk, so we've got to learn to crawl before we learn to walk. When you look at the aviation industry back a little bit over 100 years ago, the first generation of biplanes said, well, we're not going to be able to fly from New York to Los Angeles yet, but we're going to get there. And 20 years later, they did. You look at even 10 years ago, this is more powerful than the best computer you could buy. And just looking at even also with the aviation industry, like just the cost of taking a flight, like now as compared to 25 years ago, how much cheaper it's gotten just based on your use to cost index. So I think that's probably going to be one of the things that anyone says, all right, well, we still got to take it slow. Yeah, we're not going to get straight to the hyperdrive like to, the more advanced, like how many we get from Mars, whatever. But there is going to be that just taking it slow, just get things going.
Yeah, and no one knew what that was going to look like ahead of time. And no one knew what really was going to catalyze it. You had bicycle makers, trying to achieve, lighter than air travel. And we know the thing that really catalyzed it was the killer app. The killer app was the U.S. government saying, we're going to ship mail this way, so that letters can get there faster than the speed of a horse or a train. We may have found that killer app for space, and someone might be implementing it right now. Or maybe not. Maybe it's 5 years away. But we have the advantage of hindsight when we look at all those industries, and we don't have an appreciation of how messy it was and how uncertain it was as it was unfolding, or what the timeline was going to be. But the thing that I think is just absolutely tremendous, and talking to my own grandparents and great grandparents, and even now just your parents live in an entirely different world than you're living in. Your children are growing up in a totally different world than you're experiencing, and their little brothers are going to be experiencing a completely different world, and then even the older siblings could be. Things are changing so quickly that in 10 years we're not going to recognize or have been able to predict the rate at which a bunch of things happen, and also the things that we thought were sure things that are still stalled for reasons that we haven't realized. And so, I think that's critically important. I'll close with one last thing, and this is kind of another thing from a historical standpoint. This year, Congress passed a law relating to details of what it means to mine asteroids and rights to materials that extract. This was talked about in the floors of Congress and the Senate, and I encourage everybody to go check this out. It's H.R. 1508, which was rolled up into a bigger bill, H.R. 2262, sponsored by Derek Kilmer here in Washington State. Also, Patty Murray sponsored similar legislation in the Senate. And what's so exciting to me is that as an industry, we've been able to move things forward so that people actually can talk about these topics, evaluate them by the metrics, the business opportunities, and the national opportunity and treasure that it represents. that this is something that's important for the U.S., that it's something that's important for our economy. And if this is going to be a business, we got to figure out how we can allow this to be something that the United States can lead. And for me, this is just like one more little check in the box of the 1,000 other things that are going to happen before we're shuttling around space, drinking asteroid water, and living in 3D printed space stations. But all of that is absolutely in all of our lifetimes, and I look forward to creating it with all of you.